The Hells Angels biker saw the little girl brush dust off a hidden compartment, and the map inside should have stayed lost. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It all started on a chilly autumn afternoon when Johnny Reaper West, a seasoned Hells Angels biker, was passing through the quiet town of Pine Ridge. His Harley-Davidson rumbled down the deserted highway, the wind howling in his ears. Reaper had seen it all: high-speed chases, dangerous confrontations, and more than his fair share of violence. He was used to the road, the solitude, and the people who feared his leather jacket and the Hells Angels insignia on his back. But on this particular day, something was different. As he coasted down the narrow, unpaved road that led to a small park, something caught his eye. A little girl, no older than 8 or 9, was kneeling by the side of the road, brushing dust off a small, wooden compartment hidden beneath a cluster of rocks. Reaper slowed his bike, his curiosity piqued. The sight of the child was unusual, given how remote this area was. Most people, especially children, stayed clear of the rough biker roads, fearing what might come their way. But there she was, alone in the middle of nowhere. He stopped his bike and dismounted, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. The girl didn't seem startled by his presence. Instead, she kept brushing, her small hands working diligently to clear the dust away from the wooden box. It was strange, too strange. As Reaper stepped closer, he saw that the box wasn't just any ordinary container. It had intricate carvings on its surface, markings that seemed oddly familiar to him. His heart skipped a beat. These were the symbols he had seen years ago, back when he was part of a crew involved in things he had long since tried to forget. A treasure, lost to time, and locked away by those who wanted to keep it buried. The girl, completely oblivious to the danger of the situation, continued brushing the dust away until the compartment was fully exposed. Her little fingers worked at the lock, twisting it with surprising precision, and then, click, the lid creaked open. Reaper's breath caught in his chest. Inside the compartment was a map, old and faded, but unmistakably valuable. The kind of map that led to something no one should ever find, something that had been lost for decades. As Reaper looked down at the map, memories from his past started flooding back. He had heard whispers about a hidden fortune, a collection of ancient relics tied to his own past, and here it was, in the hands of an innocent little girl. The map was never supposed to be found. Whoever had hidden it wanted it lost forever, protected by secrets and blood. Reaper's mind raced. He had to make a choice. Do he take the map and risk everything? Or do he let it stay buried, just as it was meant to be? But as he looked down at the little girl, who smiled up at him innocently, he realized this was more than just a lost treasure. This was a dangerous game, and they were both caught in the middle. The map she held had the power to change everything, and now that it was in her hands, there was no going back. Reaper knew one thing for certain. The past was catching up with him, and this time, it wouldn't let go. I never should have stopped. That was the thought racing through Reaper's mind as he watched the little girl carefully fold the map and slip it into her pocket. His heart pounded in his chest, a mixture of fear and regret gnawing at him. He had been a Hells Angel for years. Nothing scared him. But something about this moment, standing in front of this innocent child holding something that could bring him face to face with the worst of his past, had him paralyzed. The silence between them stretched, broken only by the distant sound of the wind rustling through the trees. The girl looked up at him, eyes wide with innocent curiosity. "What's this for?" she asked, her small voice barely above a whisper. "What does this map lead to?" Reaper hesitated. The last thing he wanted was to explain to a child the kind of world he was tangled in, a world of violence, betrayal, and secrets long buried. But the question hung in the air, unspoken, like a challenge he had no choice but to face. He thought of the crew he used to ride with, the dangerous deals, the people they had hurt, and the treasure they had stashed away, hoping it would never be found. He should have left, should have walked away when he had the chance, but now, with the map in her hands, he couldn't turn back. His thoughts were interrupted when the girl spoke again, this time more seriously. It's a treasure, isn't it? Her eyes were sharp, the innocence in her face deceiving. Reaper's stomach dropped. How did she know? No, he said, his voice low and rough. It's not a treasure. It's something much more dangerous than that. The girl, unfazed by his words, simply nodded. She didn't understand the weight of what she had found, but Reaper could feel it. He could feel the eyes that were already on them, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. The map wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a key to something bigger, something that many people had died for, and many more would die trying to claim. As much as he wanted to protect her, Reaper knew he couldn't. Not while the world he was trying to escape from was closing in on them. The map had already set things in motion, and now he was in too deep. Reaper turned his back to the girl for a moment, trying to steady his thoughts. His mind raced as he remembered the whispers from years ago, the legends of a hidden treasure buried somewhere in the American Midwest, a treasure that could change everything. It had been a secret that the Hells Angels had protected, not out of loyalty, but out of fear of what would happen if it fell into the wrong hands. And now, it was in the hands of a child. He couldn't let her keep it. He couldn't let anyone find it. Reaper turned back to the girl, his face hardening. Listen to me, he said, his voice serious. You need to forget about this map. You need to put it back where you found it and never speak of it again. Do you understand? The girl stared at him for a long moment, her eyes flicking between his face and the map hidden in her pocket. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but Reaper cut her off. I'm serious, he said, stepping closer. This isn't a game. People will kill for this. People have died for this. The girl's expression shifted, no longer just innocent curiosity, but a quiet understanding. She nodded, though it was clear she wasn't fully grasping the magnitude of what he was saying. Reaper sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. He had to get her out of here, away from the map, away from everything. But as he glanced over his shoulder, he noticed something in the distance. A shadow moving between the trees. Reaper's heart skipped a beat. He had to act quickly. Without saying another word, he grabbed the girl by the arm and pulled her towards his bike. Come on, he urged. We need to go now. They ran, the sound of footsteps growing louder behind them. Reaper's instincts kicked in, the years of training, of running from danger, coming back in full force. He could feel the weight of the map in the girl's pocket, the danger it represented, but he couldn't stop now. Not until they were safe. He reached his bike, tossed the girl onto the back, and climbed on himself. He started the engine, the roar of the Harley drowning out the sound of approaching footsteps. The girl clung to him as he sped off, leaving the shadows and the danger behind. For now, at least. But Reaper knew this was only the beginning. The map had been found, and there was no escaping what was coming next. The ride felt endless as the motorcycle cut through back roads and empty stretches of highway while the sun slowly dropped toward the horizon. Reaper kept his focus forward, scanning every intersection and rear mirror, listening for engines that did not belong. The little girl held on tightly, her small arms wrapped around his waist, her head pressed against his back. She did not cry. She did not scream. She simply held on, trusting a stranger the world had taught her to fear. Reaper finally turned onto an old gravel road leading to a forgotten service station that had not seen business in decades. Rusted fuel pumps stood like skeletons and a collapsed awning creaked in the wind. He killed the engine and guided the girl off the bike. The silence felt heavy. This place was off the map, the kind of spot only people with reasons to disappear ever used. Reaper crouched down, so he was at her eye level. He told her his name was Reaper and that she was safe for the moment. She nodded and told him her name was Lily. She said she came to the old park because her grandfather used to bring her there before he passed away and told her stories about hidden things and lost places. Reaper felt a tight knot in his chest when she mentioned that. Lost places had a way of finding him. Inside the station, dust covered everything. Old shelves leaned against the walls, and a cracked counter still held a dusty cash register. Reaper checked every corner before motioning Lily inside. He asked her to sit on an overturned crate while he checked the building. When he was sure they were alone, he turned his attention back to the map. He asked her to show it to him. Lily hesitated only a second before pulling it from her pocket and unfolding it carefully. The paper was brittle with age, edges yellowed, ink faded but still clear enough to read. Symbols marked locations Reaper recognized from his past rides across the Midwest. Remote valleys, abandoned mines, places where people vanished and were never found. His hands trembled as he realized this was not just a treasure map. It was a record, a route, a guide left behind by someone who wanted a truth buried forever. Reaper remembered a night many years ago when an older member of the club warned him about a job that went wrong. A cache hidden after a betrayal. A map divided and scattered so no one could ever follow it again. Reaper had thought it was just another story meant to scare prospects. Now he knew better. Lily watched his face closely and asked why he looked scared. Reaper told her that some secrets were dangerous because powerful people did not want them found. He told her the map showed places tied to bad things that happened long ago. Lily asked if her grandfather was part of it. That question hit harder than any punch. Reaper did not know how to answer, but the truth was already forming in his mind. The hidden compartment she found. The careful way the map was concealed. The stories her grandfather told. This was no accident. Lily's grandfather had been a keeper, someone trusted to hide the truth and pass it along only if the time was right. Reaper stepped back and leaned against the counter, memories flooding in. Faces of men who never came home. Deals that ended in blood and silence. He realized the map was never meant for him. It was meant for someone innocent enough to see it clearly, someone untouched by greed. That was why it was hidden where a child might find it. Lily asked if they were in trouble. Reaper told her yes, but also told her he would not let anything happen to her. He said the map had woken something that should have stayed asleep. Outside, a distant engine echoed faintly through the trees. Reaper froze. He motioned Lily to stay quiet and moved toward a broken window to look out. In the distance, dust rose from the road. Someone was coming. Reaper knew then that this place was no longer safe. Whoever followed them knew the map was real. He turned back to Lily and made a decision that would change both of their lives. He told her they were going to finish what her grandfather started, not to find treasure, but to make sure the truth never hurt anyone again. As the sound of the approaching engine grew louder, Reaper felt the past close and around him. The map had been found, the trail reopened, and there was no turning back. The sound of the approaching engine grew louder as Reaper stepped back from the window, his mind racing. He could hear the faint hum of the tires on the gravel road, the engine's roar growing closer, and with it, the unmistakable feeling that the world he had tried to outrun was catching up to him. He quickly turned to Lily, who was still sitting on the overturned crate, clutching the map tightly in her small hands. Her wide eyes were fixed on him, a mixture of curiosity and fear. She knew something was wrong, but didn't fully understand the danger that was closing in. Reaper took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had to make this right. He had to protect her. He moved quickly, grabbing the map from her hands. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice low and urgent. "I need you to listen to me, Lily. We're going to leave this place. It's not safe here anymore." The girl nodded, her expression serious. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Reaper's gaze hardened. "We're going to finish what your grandfather started. And we're going to make sure this map doesn't bring anyone any more pain." He didn't give her a chance to ask any more questions as he grabbed her hand and led her toward the back of the station. The engine outside had now come to a stop, the dust rising from the tires as the vehicle came to a halt. Reaper could hear voices now, muffled but clear enough to know that they weren't here to offer a friendly handshake. They were here for the map. He pushed open the rusty back door of the service station and led Lily out into the dense trees surrounding the area. The thick underbrush scratched at their legs, but they pressed on, Reaper's instincts guiding them deeper into the woods. The voices outside grew louder as they neared the edge of the tree line. Reaper glanced over his shoulder, then back at Lily. She was holding up better than he expected, walking with the same quiet determination that had kept her calm when she first found the map. But Reaper knew this wasn't just a child's curiosity. This was something much bigger. The truth behind the map, the treasure it led to, and the men who were hunting it, was a secret that had the power to destroy lives. It was something Reaper never wanted to return to. The night he left the Hells Angels felt like a lifetime ago, but the demons from that past were never far behind. As they pushed through the underbrush, the sound of boots crunching through the leaves grew louder, signaling that their pursuers were getting closer. Reaper's heart raced, adrenaline pumping through his veins. They couldn't let them catch up. He knew the map was the key, but he wasn't about to let these men tear everything apart to get to it. They reached a small clearing, and Reaper stopped abruptly, pulling Lily behind him. He motioned for her to crouch down low, and she did so without hesitation, pressing herself against the cool earth. Reaper stood, perfectly still, listening. The voices were getting closer now, the men searching the perimeter. He knew they couldn't stay hidden for long. He turned to Lily, his face serious. "You stay here," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Do not move. I'm going to make sure they don't find you." Lily nodded, her eyes wide but trusting. "Be careful, Reaper," she whispered. Reaper didn't respond. He was already moving, slipping silently through the trees, his every step calculated. He needed to get the drop on them, just like he had learned all those years ago. The men were closing in on the clearing, their voices getting louder as they approached the spot where Reaper had left Lily. He crouched low, moving with the quiet precision that came from years of training. His fingers brushed the handle of his knife as he silently made his way through the thick brush. He knew this was it. This was the moment that would determine whether they made it out alive or not. He wasn't going to let them take Lily, not while he still had a breath in his body. He was close now. Just a few more feet, and he'd be in position. The men were only a few yards ahead, talking amongst themselves. They had no idea he was there. They were too focused on the map, too focused on what it could lead to. Reaper gripped the knife in his hand, steadying his breath. It was now or never. He lunged forward, moving quickly and silently, and within moments, the first man was down. His body crumpled to the ground with a soft thud. The others spun around, shocked by the sudden attack, but Reaper was already on them. He moved with the precision of someone who had fought countless battles, each strike landing where it needed to. Within moments, 3 men lay on the ground, incapacitated and confused. The last one, a tall man with a thick beard, managed to scramble to his feet and reach for his gun, but Reaper was faster. He grabbed the man by the collar and slammed him into a nearby tree, knocking the wind out of him. The man gasped for air, his hand clutching his side. "Where is it?" Reaper demanded, his voice low and menacing. The man didn't respond. Reaper tightened his grip. "Tell me, or I swear I'll." He was interrupted by a faint rustling in the trees behind him. He whipped around, his knife raised, but it was only Lily, cautiously stepping into the clearing, her eyes wide with concern. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, her voice shaking. "I heard them and I thought I could help." Reaper's heart sank, but he quickly masked his reaction. He dropped the man to the ground, ignoring the man's groans. "It's all right," he said, his voice softer now. "You did great. Let's go." The two of them turned and walked back into the trees, leaving the chaos behind them. Reaper knew this was far from over. The men would recover. They would be back. But for now, they were safe. And that was all that mattered. They did not stop running until the forest thinned and the ground dipped into a shallow ravine where the trees grew close together and the air smelled damp and old. Reaper slowed his pace only when he was certain no one followed them. He guided Lily down behind a fallen log and waited, listening to the woods breathe around them. Every sound mattered now. The distant birds, the wind through the branches, the absence of engines. Only when his pulse finally eased did he allow himself to sit. Lily knelt beside him, her face smudged with dirt, her eyes still wide but steady. Reaper realized then that she was not panicking. She was watching him, learning, reading his reactions the way children did when they sensed danger. He told her they needed to stay hidden until nightfall. She nodded and asked if the men would come back. Reaper told her the truth. Yes, they would. People who chased secrets like this did not stop easily. That was why they had to be smarter. He pulled the map from inside his jacket and spread it carefully across a flat stone. In the dim light filtering through the trees, the markings became clearer. Lines traced paths through states and counties. Small symbols marked locations that no longer appeared on modern maps. Reaper recognized an old quarry in southern Missouri, a decommissioned rail spur in Kansas, a stretch of land in Iowa once owned by a shell company tied to men he used to know. This was not a treasure map in the storybook sense. This was a ledger of buried truths. Each location represented something hidden. Evidence. Money. Bones. Reaper felt the weight of it settle in his chest. Lily leaned closer, pointing at one of the symbols and asking what it meant. Reaper hesitated before answering. He told her it marked places where bad people hid things they did not want found. She asked if her grandfather was a bad person. Reaper shook his head and told her no. Some people helped hide bad things so they could be kept from hurting others. Her grandfather had likely been one of those people. A keeper. Someone trusted to protect the secret by making sure no one powerful could control it. Lily seemed to accept that, though sadness flickered across her face. Reaper folded the map again and tucked it away. He told her they needed supplies and information. He could not solve this alone. They would need someone who knew how to disappear and someone who understood old routes and forgotten places. There was one person who came to mind. A man named Cole who once rode with Reaper before leaving the life behind to run a scrap yard on the edge of a dying town. Cole knew every back road for 50 miles and asked no questions he did not need answered. Reaper decided they would head there once darkness fell. The town was about 30 miles away, far enough that anyone tracking them would lose the trail if they were careful. As they waited, Lily asked why Reaper helped her. He thought about that for a long moment. He told her that once he had been part of things that hurt people who never deserved it. Helping her was a way to make sure the past did not win. She considered that quietly, and then said her grandfather always said the truth was heavy, but it belonged to everyone. Reaper looked away, the words cutting deeper than she knew. As evening crept in, they moved again, sticking to tree lines and old fence rows until they reached the road where the motorcycle waited hidden beneath brush. Reaper checked the fuel and wiped dirt from the seat before helping Lily climb on. They rode without lights at first, letting the sky guide them, until the moon rose enough to show the road ahead. Every mile felt borrowed. Every passing truck made Reaper tense. He took turns that added distance but reduced risk, following routes he had memorized years ago when running jobs no one spoke about. When the lights of the town finally appeared, he did not head straight in. He circled wide, watching for unfamiliar vehicles, making sure they were not followed. Only then did he pull into the darkened lot beside the scrapyard. Rusted metal towers loomed around them like silent witnesses. Reaper cut the engine and listened. No movement. No voices. He told Lily to stay close. As they walked toward the small office building, Reaper felt the map press against his side like a reminder. They were past the point of hiding now. Whatever the map revealed, whatever truths lay buried at those locations, they were moving toward it step by step. And somewhere behind them, others were doing the same. The scrapyard was quiet as Reaper and Lily made their way through the shadowed lot, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the dirt and debris beneath their boots. The office building at the far end of the lot seemed abandoned, its windows dark, with only a faint light flickering in the corner. Reaper's instincts were sharp, every sense on high alert, but the place felt eerily still. He led Lily toward the door, careful not to make a sound. He knocked once, then twice, a rhythmic tap that barely made a dent in the silence. After a moment, the door creaked open, and a man appeared in the doorway, his silhouette barely visible in the dim light. He was tall, lean, and wore the same rugged demeanor as Reaper, someone who had lived a hard life and learned to keep quiet about it. "Reaper," the man asked, his voice low and gravelly. "What the hell are you doing here?" Reaper didn't answer immediately. Instead, he scanned the yard behind him, ensuring there were no signs of any unwanted visitors. Satisfied that they were still alone, he stepped inside, pulling Lily along with him. The man stepped back, allowing them both entry. "Cole," Reaper finally said, his voice steady. "We need your help." Cole narrowed his eyes, studying Reaper for a moment before glancing at the young girl beside him. "This doesn't look good," he muttered. "What's going on?" Reaper glanced at Lily, who was now looking around the room, her eyes wide with curiosity, but still, she kept close to him, sensing the danger in the air. "It's a long story," Reaper replied, his tone serious. "But I need to lay low for a while. We're being hunted." Cole's expression shifted. He had been around long enough to know that when Reaper said something like that, it wasn't just some passing trouble, it was serious. "You've always got a way of getting into trouble, Reaper," Cole said, shaking his head. "All right, come on in. You're safe for the moment, but we need to talk." They walked deeper into the dimly lit room. Old motorcycle parts were scattered everywhere, rusted gears, broken chains, frames stripped of their former glory. It smelled of oil and metal, a scent that seemed to cling to Cole like an old memory. Reaper sat down at a weathered table near the back, motioning for Lily to sit next to him. "So what happened?" Cole asked, taking a seat across from them. Reaper didn't hesitate. He pulled the map from his jacket and laid it on the table between them. "I found this," he said quietly. Cole's eyes locked onto the map immediately, and a flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Where did you find this?" Cole asked, his voice suddenly more urgent. "A little girl found it," Reaper answered. Cole looked at him, disbelief in his eyes. "A little girl?" he repeated. "Yeah," Reaper said, glancing over at Lily, who was now studying the map with quiet intensity. "She's got something to do with this. Her grandfather hid it." Cole leaned forward, his gaze shifting between the map and Lily. "This isn't just a treasure map, is it?" Reaper shook his head. "No, it's more than that. This map leads to something that shouldn't be found. It's a ledger of things that people, dangerous people, have buried. Secrets. Secrets that could ruin lives." "And you think her grandfather was involved?" Cole asked, his voice heavy with the weight of the question. Reaper nodded. "I don't know yet, but I think he was the one hiding the truth, protecting it. And now, it's in her hands." There was a long pause as Cole processed the information. "This is bad," he finally said. "Very bad. There's no telling who's looking for this map, Reaper. People like us don't just walk away from this kind of thing. The wrong people are going to come after you both. They'll stop at nothing." Reaper's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He knew the stakes better than anyone. "I need to keep her safe," he said, his voice low. "She doesn't deserve this." Cole stood up and walked over to a shelf filled with dusty boxes. "You know I can help you lay low for a while," he said, grabbing a few old supplies. "But if you really want to disappear, we need to keep moving. People like us don't get second chances." "Where can we go?" Reaper asked. "I've got a place," Cole said, turning back to face them. "A cabin up north. It's off the grid. You'll be safe there, for a while at least." Reaper stood up, and Lily followed his lead. "We leave now," he said, his mind already working on the next move. He had no idea how long they could stay hidden, but he was determined to protect Lily, no matter what. As they prepared to leave the yard, Cole handed Reaper a duffel bag filled with supplies. "Take it," Cole said. "You'll need it." Reaper nodded, then turned to Lily. "Stay close to me. No matter what happens, don't go off on your own. We move together, or not at all." Lily nodded, though her young face was filled with uncertainty. Reaper led the way out of the yard and toward the truck Cole had parked behind the building. The night air was cold, and the moonlight cast long shadows across the lot. Reaper's senses were on high alert, every sound amplified in the silence. As they drove away from the scrapyard, Reaper couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. He glanced over at Lily, who had fallen quiet, staring out the window. She didn't fully understand the danger, but Reaper knew that soon, she would. As they made their way through the back roads, Reaper glanced at the map again, his mind racing with the implications. The truth was out there, hidden in the darkness, and soon, it would find them. He just hoped they were ready. The night was cold, and the darkness enveloped the small truck as it sped down the narrow roads. Reaper's knuckles were white against the steering wheel, his mind working through the countless possibilities of what lay ahead. The map still sat in his jacket pocket, the weight of it pressing against his side as if it were a ticking time bomb. Every few miles, he glanced over at Lily, who was staring out of the window, lost in thought. Her face was pale, the reality of their situation slowly sinking in. She had seen too much for someone her age. She had stumbled upon a secret buried by people who would kill to keep it hidden. And now, they were both in the crosshairs of those who wanted to destroy the truth. Reaper could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, but he knew there was no turning back. He had made a promise to protect her, and no matter the cost, he would keep it. The truck rumbled down the dark highway, the headlights cutting through the mist that had settled over the road. The trees around them swayed in the wind, their branches creaking as though warning them of the danger ahead. Reaper's eyes scanned the rearview mirror, but all he saw was darkness. For now, they were alone. But Reaper knew that would change. They couldn't hide forever. Eventually, the people after the map would catch up, and when they did, it would be too late. The only question was whether Reaper would be ready for them when they came. He turned the wheel sharply, taking a shortcut that led deeper into the woods. The truck jolted over the uneven ground, but Reaper held steady. He had driven these roads before, years ago, when he had been running from the law, running from a past that still haunted him. This place, this cabin up north, was the perfect hideout. It was remote, off the grid, and nearly impossible to find unless you knew exactly where to look. He had come here once, long ago, to lay low after a job had gone wrong. But now, the cabin held a different meaning. It was a sanctuary, a place where he could regroup, plan, and keep Lily safe. As they neared the cabin, Reaper's thoughts were interrupted by a sharp crackle over the radio. He quickly turned down the volume, trying to ignore the sense of unease that crept over him. The truck finally slowed as they reached a clearing, and the cabin came into view. It looked just as he remembered it, isolated, hidden behind a wall of trees, with a faint plume of smoke rising from the chimney. It was a place forgotten by time, where no one would look for them. Reaper stopped the truck and turned off the engine. "We're here," he said, looking at Lily. She nodded silently, her face drawn with worry. Reaper got out of the truck and opened the passenger door, offering his hand to help Lily down. "Come on, let's get inside before anyone sees us." She took his hand, but hesitated for a moment, looking around as if she could feel the weight of the danger pressing in on them. Reaper's heart tightened. He could see the fear in her eyes. The same fear he had seen in the eyes of countless others, people who had become caught in the crossfire of the life he had left behind. He hated that she had to see this. He hated that she had been dragged into this mess. "We're safe here," he reassured her, leading her up the small wooden steps to the door. The cabin was modest, with simple furniture and a stone fireplace that still held the warmth of a fire that had been burning all day. The smell of pine and old wood filled the air as Reaper went to the back room and pulled a couple of blankets from the closet. He set them on the couch and turned to Lily. "Make yourself comfortable," he said, his voice softer now. Lily sat down slowly, pulling her knees to her chest. "Reaper," she said quietly, "why are they after us? What's on that map?" Reaper hesitated. He had been avoiding the question, but he knew it was only a matter of time before she asked. He sat down beside her, his gaze fixed on the fire as he searched for the right words. "The map," he began, his voice low. "It's not just a map to treasure. It's a map to something much more dangerous. Something that powerful people want to control." Lily looked up at him, her face serious. "What kind of powerful people?" Reaper's jaw tightened. He had hoped to keep her away from the truth for a little while longer, but there was no escaping it now. "The kind of people who don't care who gets hurt," he said quietly. "The kind of people who will stop at nothing to get what they want." He paused, the weight of his words sinking in. "Your grandfather." He was trying to protect it. He was trying to keep the map hidden because he knew what would happen if anyone found it. Lily's eyes widened. "So he knew? He knew what was on the map." Reaper nodded. "Yes, he knew. And he made sure it was kept hidden, kept away from people who would use it for the wrong reasons. But now, it's out in the open, and we have to make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands." Lily's face softened with understanding. "So, we're going to stop them?" she asked, her voice small but determined. Reaper smiled slightly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "We're going to do our best," he said, his voice heavy with the burden of what lay ahead. As the night wore on, Reaper sat by the fire, watching the flames dance. He didn't know how long they would be safe here. He didn't know what the future held. But one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let anyone take Lily, or the truth, from him. Not now, not ever. The days that followed were a blur of cautious movements and quiet planning. Reaper kept a close eye on the road and the surrounding woods, but the reality was impossible to ignore. The danger was closing in. Every creak of the cabin's old wood, every whisper of wind through the trees, made him feel as though the world was watching them. He knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. Eventually, the people looking for the map would find them. The only question was when. Lily had been quiet for most of the time, taking everything in, but Reaper could feel the weight of her thoughts. She was no longer just the curious child who stumbled upon a secret. She was part of this now, caught in the same tangled mess that had haunted him for years. He had promised to protect her, and now that promise was all that kept him going. The map, now folded neatly in his jacket, still burned with importance. Reaper knew it led to something that, once found, could change everything. It wasn't just a treasure map. It was a blueprint for destruction. He sat by the fire one evening, watching the flames flicker and dance. Lily was in the corner, playing with a few scraps of what she had found, trying to keep herself busy. Reaper sighed, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had to get to the next location on the map. He didn't know what he was expecting to find, but he knew it was the only way to stop this. He stood up abruptly, pacing the small space of the cabin. "We need to move," he muttered to himself. Lily looked up from where she was sitting, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "Where are we going?" she asked. Reaper hesitated, his mind racing. We're going to find the next clue. It's the only way to keep you safe. Lily nodded slowly, but Reaper could see the fear in her eyes. She was scared. She wasn't just scared of the people after them, but scared of what would happen if they actually found what was hidden in the map. Do you think we can stop them? She asked quietly. Reaper didn't answer right away. The truth was, he wasn't sure. They were up against something bigger than him, something he couldn't just fight his way out of. But he wasn't going to let that stop him. He owed it to Lily, and he owed it to everyone who had been hurt by the secrets of the past. We have to try, he said finally, his voice firm. We'll figure it out. Together. That night, they packed what little they had and prepared to leave at first light. The road ahead would be dangerous, but it was the only option left. As Reaper finished loading the truck, he caught a glimpse of something in the distance, a shadow, just out of the corner of his eye. His heart skipped a beat. Someone was out there. He moved swiftly to the side of the cabin, pulling Lily behind him. Stay low, he whispered. They waited in silence, listening to the wind rustle through the trees. The shadow moved closer, then stopped. Reaper's breath caught in his throat as he recognized the silhouette. It was Cole. Reaper exhaled in relief, but didn't move. He stayed hidden, watching Cole approach the cabin. The last thing he wanted was to risk exposing their location, but Cole wasn't a threat. He had helped them once. He had to be here for a reason. After a few moments, Cole stepped into the clearing, his face hard, but with a flicker of concern in his eyes. Reaper, he said, his voice low. You've got company. Not good company. Reaper stood up slowly, his eyes narrowing. How close? Cole glanced over his shoulder, then back at Reaper. Close enough to make you nervous. I wouldn't stick around here much longer. Reaper nodded, his mind already shifting into action. They didn't have much time. Get Lily to the truck, he said. We're leaving now. Cole hesitated but nodded. You sure you want to head out like this? It's too risky. We don't have a choice, Reaper said. They're getting too close. If we don't keep moving, we're done. Cole didn't argue. He walked over to Lily, who was watching the exchange, her eyes wide but still trusting. Come on, kid. Let's get you out of here, he said gently. Lily nodded and followed Cole, but before they reached the truck, Reaper caught Cole's arm. Stay close, Reaper warned him. Don't trust anyone. Cole gave him a sharp look, but said nothing. They moved quickly, getting into the truck and driving off into the night. The road was winding and dark, but Reaper knew every inch of it. He drove with purpose, keeping a steady pace, but always checking the rearview mirror. Cole sat in the passenger seat, silent but tense. He knew they were on borrowed time. Where to? Cole asked after a few minutes. The next location on the map, Reaper replied. It's the only place we can go now. It's the only place that could give us the answers we need. They drove for hours, the landscape shifting from wooded hills to open plains. Reaper couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed, even though no one had appeared on their tail. His grip tightened on the steering wheel, the miles ticking by like minutes. The tension in the truck was palpable, but Reaper kept his focus. They had to make it to the next stop. They had to find out what was hidden before it was too late. Lily was quiet in the back seat, her eyes drifting closed as exhaustion set in. But Reaper knew sleep wouldn't come for him, not while they were still in danger. He had to stay awake, stay sharp, and make sure Lily was safe. They couldn't afford to make a mistake now. The road stretched out before them, endless and dark, with nothing but the hum of the engine and the occasional flicker of the headlights cutting through the night. Reaper's eyes were fixed on the road ahead, but his mind kept drifting back to the map. Every inch of the thing felt like a chain pulling them closer to something terrible, something neither he nor Lily were prepared for. As the hours passed, the tension in the truck grew thick. Cole sat beside him, his posture stiff, his eyes scanning the shadows. They both knew the danger wasn't just behind them. It was ahead, waiting for them to make a mistake. The truck's tires crunched on the gravel road as Reaper made another sharp turn. The landscape had changed, now rolling into a more rugged area, the trees growing thicker, the land less forgiving. This was the territory that matched the map, the spots that were forgotten by time and memory, places hidden away for a reason. As they neared the next marked location, Reaper slowed the truck, the vehicle barely moving as it crept along the unpaved road. He had no idea what they would find when they reached their destination. All he knew was that the map was leading them deeper into a web of secrets. How much further? Cole asked, his voice low. Reaper didn't answer right away. He checked the map again, his fingers running over the faded lines. "Not far," he said after a moment. "We should be close." Lily, who had been silent for most of the journey, suddenly spoke up from the back seat. "Are we going to be safe there?" Her voice was small, vulnerable, yet there was a hint of something else, something brave that Reaper hadn't noticed before. He glanced at her through the rearview mirror, meeting her wide, trusting eyes. He wanted to lie. He wanted to tell her everything would be fine, that the worst was over, but he couldn't. Not when they were heading straight into the heart of the storm. "We'll be safe for now," he said instead, trying to keep his voice calm. "But we need to keep moving. As long as we stay ahead of them, we'll be okay." Lily nodded, but Reaper could see the worry in her eyes. He couldn't blame her. He was worried too. The truck rumbled over the uneven ground, and after a few more twists and turns, they arrived at the spot the map had pointed to. Reaper parked the truck and killed the engine, letting the stillness settle around them. It was quiet, too quiet. No sounds of civilization. No lights. Just the sound of the wind and the occasional rustling of leaves. Reaper stepped out of the truck, his boots sinking slightly into the dirt as he looked around. The place felt abandoned, forgotten by time. There were remnants of old buildings, half-collapsed barns, and rusted machinery scattered across the property. It looked like no one had been here in years. But something didn't sit right. The air was thick with the sense that they weren't alone. "Stay close," Reaper said, his voice low but firm. He didn't wait for an answer, just gestured for Lily and Cole to follow him as he moved toward one of the old buildings. It was an old storage shed, weathered by the elements, its wooden frame barely holding together. The door creaked loudly as Reaper pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit interior filled with old crates and abandoned tools. The smell of mold and dust hit him immediately. He stepped inside, his senses on high alert, every nerve in his body screaming that something was wrong. "What are we looking for?" Cole asked, his voice echoing in the small space. "I don't know," Reaper replied, scanning the room. "But it's here. It has to be." He moved to a corner of the shed, where a stack of old crates stood precariously. He pushed them aside with one hand, revealing a hidden trapdoor in the floor. His heart skipped a beat. This was it. The hidden compartment. Reaper knelt down, pulling at the rusty handle of the trapdoor. It creaked open with a groan, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Without hesitation, he pulled out his flashlight and descended. Lily followed closely behind, her small hand clutching his jacket sleeve. Cole hesitated for a moment before following them down. The air grew cooler as they descended, the smell of damp earth filling their nostrils. At the bottom of the stairs, they found themselves in a small underground room, the walls lined with shelves full of dusty old boxes and crates. In the center of the room was a large metal chest. Reaper's pulse quickened. This was it. This was what they had been searching for. He approached the chest, his hands trembling as he reached for the lock. It clicked open with a soft snap, and he slowly lifted the lid. Inside, the chest was filled with stacks of old documents, each one carefully sealed in protective bags. Reaper's eyes scanned the contents, recognizing the familiar markings: bank accounts, offshore funds, old contracts. This wasn't just a treasure. This was the key to everything. The map had led them here, to the heart of a conspiracy that had been buried for decades. Reaper felt the weight of it all settle on his shoulders. He had found it, but in doing so, he had also exposed them to a greater danger. The people who had buried these secrets wouldn't let them walk away unscathed. He turned to Lily and Cole, who were standing in the doorway, waiting for him to speak. "We need to get out of here," Reaper said, his voice grim. "And we need to get these documents to the right people before it's too late." The silence in the room was deafening. The reality of what they had uncovered was starting to sink in, and Reaper knew they were no longer just running from the past. They were running from the truth itself. The tension in the air was palpable as Reaper closed the chest and quickly slammed the lid shut. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of what they had just uncovered. Every document, every piece of evidence in that chest was tied to a network of corruption and deceit so vast it could shatter everything, if the wrong people got their hands on it. He turned to Lily and Cole, who were standing in the doorway, their expressions a mix of curiosity and fear. "We can't stay here," Reaper said, his voice low and urgent. "We need to get this to someone who can use it, someone who can expose it all." "Who?" Cole asked, his voice skeptical. "Who can we trust with this?" Reaper didn't have an answer. He had known a lot of people in his time, but after everything that had happened, trust was a rare commodity. "We'll figure it out," Reaper replied, glancing back at the chest one last time. "But for now, we get out of here." He motioned for Lily to follow him, and they made their way back up the narrow staircase, stepping carefully to avoid making any noise. The air felt heavy with the knowledge of what they had just found. They had uncovered the very thing that could bring down some of the most powerful people in the country, and now they were carrying it with them. As they reached the top of the stairs, Reaper's instincts kicked in. Something was off. The hair on the back of his neck stood up, and he motioned for them to stop. They were in the main room of the shed now, but it didn't feel safe. The shadows seemed darker, the silence more intense. He slowly turned, listening carefully. That's when he heard it, the faint sound of footsteps outside. Someone was coming. Reaper's heart raced as he reached for the knife tucked in his belt. He had no idea who was out there, but it didn't matter. If they were here for the map or the documents, they would have to go through him first. He turned to Lily and Cole, his voice sharp. "Stay down. Don't make a sound." They both nodded, their faces pale, but they didn't question him. Reaper moved quietly to the corner of the room, keeping his back against the wall, his eyes fixed on the door. He could hear the footsteps getting closer, and his pulse quickened. This was it. Whoever had been watching them wasn't far behind. The door creaked open just a crack, and Reaper's hand tightened around the knife's handle. He waited. The shadow outside paused, then slipped in through the crack in the door. Reaper didn't hesitate. He sprang forward, his knife aimed at the intruder. But just as quickly, he stopped. "Cole," he said, his voice hoarse with surprise. Cole stood there in the doorway, his hands raised in surrender, his eyes wide. "I thought you said to stay down," Reaper muttered, his heart still pounding. "What the hell is going on?" Cole didn't answer right away. He stepped fully into the room, his expression serious. "They know we're here," he said quietly. "They've been tracking you." Reaper's stomach dropped. "Who?" he asked, his voice low but urgent. Cole looked over his shoulder, as if making sure no one was following him. "The people who want that map. They've been tracking your every move. They know about the cabin." Reaper's mind raced. This wasn't just about the documents anymore. They had walked right into the lion's den, and now there was nowhere to run. "How long do we have?" Reaper asked. Cole's eyes darkened. "Not long. Maybe an hour, maybe less." Reaper cursed under his breath. "We need to move. Now." He turned to Lily, who had been quietly watching the exchange, her wide eyes filled with confusion and fear. He walked over to her, his voice soft. "We're going to leave. You're going to be okay. I won't let anyone hurt you." Lily nodded, though her face showed the weight of what she had just heard. Reaper knew she was scared, but he also knew she was strong. They all were. They had to be. "Cole, get the truck," Reaper ordered. "We'll take the back roads." "On it," Cole replied, moving quickly toward the door. Reaper followed, keeping his senses on high alert as they stepped out into the cold night air. He could feel the eyes of their pursuers on them, even if they didn't know exactly where they were. The truck was parked just behind the shed, hidden from view, but Reaper didn't trust it to stay hidden for long. He glanced over his shoulder, scanning the trees. It felt like the forest itself was closing in around them. As they approached the truck, the sound of an engine revving echoed through the woods. Reaper's eyes widened. They weren't the only ones on this road. He climbed into the truck, slamming the door shut behind him. Cole was already in the driver's seat, his face grim. "We need to get to the next spot," Reaper said, his voice urgent. "Keep going. Don't stop for anything." The truck roared to life, and they sped down the winding road, the headlights cutting through the dark, narrow path ahead. Reaper could hear the distant sound of an engine behind them, growing louder as they sped through the trees. He glanced back. The headlights were getting closer. They were being followed. "We're not losing them," Cole muttered, his knuckles white against the wheel. Reaper knew Cole was right. The only way to lose them was to take a risk, something that could get them killed. "Pull off," Reaper said suddenly. "We're going off the road." Cole shot him a look, but didn't hesitate. He swerved the truck onto a narrow path that led into the woods, the tires skidding on the loose gravel. The truck bounced over the uneven ground, but they kept going, the sound of the other vehicles still close behind. Reaper's heart pounded as the truck picked up speed, weaving between trees. They were going off the grid, hoping to lose their pursuers in the vast wilderness. He just prayed it was enough. The truck barreled down the narrow trail, the tires grinding against the uneven terrain as the trees whipped past in a blur. Reaper's eyes scanned the rearview mirror, watching the headlights of their pursuers get closer with every second. His grip tightened on the handle above the passenger door, his mind racing through every possibility. They had to lose them. It wasn't just about escaping. It was about surviving. He turned to Cole, his voice low but sharp. "Keep going. Don't stop." Cole's face was tense, his knuckles white on the steering wheel as he veered the truck around another sharp turn. "I'm not stopping, but they're gaining on us," he muttered. Reaper could hear the thrum of the other truck's engine now, right on their tail. They were too close. They couldn't outrun them like this. Reaper's mind raced. He needed a plan. Fast. He glanced out the window, the dark forest closing in around them, but something caught his eye. A narrow path, barely visible through the underbrush. He pointed. "Take that way." Cole didn't hesitate. He yanked the wheel hard, steering the truck onto the barely visible trail. The tires slid across the loose ground as the truck bounced and jolted through the thick woods. The sound of the pursuing vehicle was still close, but they were moving faster now, the trees creating a natural barrier behind them. Reaper's heart hammered in his chest as the truck careened down the path, the engine roaring beneath them. The branches scraped against the sides of the truck, and for a moment, he feared they were going to lose control, but Cole was driving with the kind of instinct that only came from years of experience. Reaper glanced over at Lily, who was gripping the seat, her face pale but determined. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer now. She nodded, though her eyes betrayed the fear she was trying to hide. "I'm fine," she whispered. Reaper gave her a reassuring nod, then turned his attention back to the road ahead. The trail seemed to get steeper, the trees closing in tighter around them. This was it. The only way they would get out was to lose the other vehicle completely. Reaper could hear the engine of the pursuing truck still close behind, but the sounds of the forest were drowning out most of it. The path ahead narrowed, but they were picking up speed. Cole was pushing the truck to its limit, his face set in grim determination. "Hang on," he shouted as the truck bounced off a rock, sending them into a wild swerve. Reaper gritted his teeth, the truck swaying violently. He didn't know how much longer they could keep this up. "They're not going to stop," Reaper muttered under his breath. "They'll follow us until we're dead in the water." Cole didn't respond, but Reaper could see the tension in his jaw. The man knew what they were up against. The trees thinned slightly, giving them a brief glimpse of the road ahead. Reaper saw the faint glow of headlights in the distance. They were still coming. They couldn't outrun them forever. "Take a left here," Reaper shouted. Cole jerked the wheel, sending them careening off the trail and into another dense patch of woods. The truck bucked as they plowed through the underbrush, the branches snapping as they went. Reaper's eyes stayed fixed on the rearview mirror, watching the other truck struggle to follow the sharp turn. But the vehicle was still gaining, its headlights now blindingly close. "How much farther?" Cole yelled, his voice strained. "Not much," Reaper replied. His mind was working in overdrive, trying to calculate their next move. They needed to get to a clearing, somewhere they could either fight back or disappear. And fast. He spotted a break in the trees up ahead, an open field. If they could make it there, they might have a shot. "Head for the field," Reaper shouted. "Keep pushing." Cole nodded, his face grim as he slammed his foot down on the accelerator. The truck surged forward, the headlights of the pursuing vehicle blinding them in the rearview mirror. Reaper's pulse quickened as they neared the clearing. They were almost there. But just as they hit the edge of the field, Reaper's heart sank. A second truck appeared at the far end of the clearing, blocking their only escape route. "Shit," Reaper cursed under his breath. They were trapped. Cole slammed on the brakes, sending the truck skidding to a halt in the middle of the field. The sound of the tires screeching against the dirt was deafening. Reaper's mind raced. He could see the two trucks closing in on them, trapping them between the vehicles. They had nowhere to go. The sound of footsteps approaching echoed from all sides. They were surrounded. Reaper grabbed the bag of documents from the seat next to him and tossed it to Cole. "Get Lily out of here." "Now," he commanded. "I'll hold them off." Cole hesitated, his eyes flicking between Reaper and the approaching trucks. "No, we fight. We stand our ground." "We don't have the time for that," Reaper said, his voice hard. "Go. Now. I'll cover you." Cole didn't argue. He reached for the door, his hand trembling, and swung it open. "You better be right about this." Cole said, his voice low. Reaper nodded. I am. Just go. Lily, sensing the gravity of the moment, grabbed Reaper's arm. Be safe, please. Reaper gave her a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. I will, he lied. As Cole and Lily ran for the trees, Reaper stepped out of the truck, his eyes scanning the two approaching vehicles. This wasn't over. Not yet. But it was his fight now. He wasn't going to let them take her. Not while he still had a breath in his body. The sound of footsteps grew louder as Reaper stood his ground, his eyes fixed on the two trucks closing in. His pulse raced, but he forced himself to remain calm. The map and the documents were still in play, but now they had to survive long enough to use them. The two trucks came to a stop just a few yards away, their headlights blinding him. He could hear the engines idle, the low rumble of men getting out, the unmistakable sound of boots crunching on gravel. Reaper's heart pounded in his chest. He could hear Lily and Cole running into the trees behind him, but his focus remained on the men approaching him. He had a plan, but it was risky, and he didn't have much time to make it work. He reached for the small handgun hidden in the waistband of his pants. The weight of it felt heavy in his palm, a reminder of how far he had fallen from the man he used to be. Once, he had been a protector, a guardian of the road. Now, he was fighting for his life, and for the life of the girl who had inadvertently brought all this chaos into his world. Reaper! The shout came from the first truck. A man stepped forward, his face shadowed by the bright lights, but Reaper could make out the unmistakable patch on his leather jacket, a badge of the crew that had once been his family. It felt like a betrayal to see it now, but there was no time to dwell on it. You've got nowhere to run, the man called out, his voice rough and cold. Hand over the documents, and we'll let you walk away. Reaper didn't flinch. He took a step forward, his hand still tied around the gun. I don't have them, he said, his voice steady. You're wasting your time. The man grinned, taking a slow step closer. You think we're that stupid? We know what you've got, Reaper. We've been tracking you for miles. Now, hand them over. Reaper kept his cool, but his mind was working at lightning speed. He had to get out of this. He had to make sure Lily and Cole made it to safety. He couldn't let them get their hands on the documents. He didn't care what happened to him, but he wasn't going to let those pieces of paper destroy everything else. He looked over his shoulder, where the sound of breaking branches had caught his attention. It was Cole and Lily, hidden in the trees, but it wouldn't take long for them to be discovered. He had no choice. Reaper dropped his hand to his side, slowly unholstering the gun, his eyes never leaving the man in front of him. I said, I don't have them, he repeated, his voice hard. But you know what I do have. The man stopped, his grin faltering for a second. What's that? Reaper didn't hesitate. A way out. He fired. The shot rang out in the stillness of the night, the bullet hitting the ground just a few inches from the man's feet. The man jumped back, cursing under his breath, his hands flying up to his head, as if the threat alone would make Reaper back down. But Reaper didn't stop. He fired again, the bullet slicing through the air and embedding itself into the side of the second truck's tire. The air around them crackled with tension as the two men froze, caught between fear and disbelief. Reaper didn't wait for them to make a move. He darted to the side, moving toward the tree line where he had seen Lily and Cole. They were still there, crouched behind the trees, but Reaper knew it wouldn't take long before the men regrouped and came after them. He was running out of time. As he reached them, he heard the sound of engines roaring to life behind him. He didn't waste a second. Move, he shouted, his voice harsh. We're not safe here. We've got to go. Lily and Cole didn't hesitate. They scrambled to their feet and followed him into the trees, their steps quick and quiet. Reaper led the way, moving through the forest with the same precision he had learned in the Hells Angels, the same instincts that had kept him alive all these years. But this wasn't the same. This wasn't about surviving another fight. This was about making sure Lily got out alive. He glanced over his shoulder, seeing the headlights of the trucks shining through the trees, moving closer. They were following them, but they were slower now. Reaper didn't know if it was because they were regrouping, or if they were hesitant to follow too far into the woods. Either way, it bought him a few precious moments. The sound of the trucks grew fainter as they ran deeper into the forest. They had to get to the road ahead, to the place where the map had pointed them. There was no turning back now. He could feel the weight of the documents pressing against his side, and he knew that every moment they wasted brought them closer to being caught. But Reaper wasn't going to let that happen. Not while Lily was with him. Not while there was still a chance. They ran through the thick underbrush, the sounds of the forest closing in around them. The trees were dense, the ground uneven, but Reaper didn't slow down. He could feel the weight of the past catching up with him, but he wasn't going to let it win. Not this time. The sound of the trucks was still behind them, but for now, they were out of sight. Reaper glanced at Lily, who was running beside him, her breath heavy but determined. He gave her a reassuring smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Stay close," he said, his voice low. "We're almost there." They pushed on, the path ahead uncertain, but one thing was clear. They couldn't stop until they reached the end of this, no matter what it took. The trees began to thin as Reaper pushed forward, his breath heavy in the cold night air. He could hear Lily and Cole behind him, but his focus was entirely on the road ahead. The sound of the trucks had faded, and for a moment, Reaper dared to hope that they had lost them. But deep down, he knew it wasn't over. It wouldn't be over until the map was destroyed, until the truth was buried forever. The forest gave way to a narrow dirt road, and Reaper slowed, scanning the area for any signs of movement. He was looking for something specific, a small cabin he had once used as a safe house years ago. It was remote, out of the way, and most importantly, it was off the grid. He knew the cabin was the only place they had left to go, the only place where they could regroup and figure out what to do next. "We're almost there," he muttered to himself, but it didn't ease the weight pressing down on his chest. The truck bounced over the uneven road as they continued to drive. Lily sat in the back, her face pressed against the window, watching the trees pass by with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Reaper caught her reflection in the rearview mirror and felt a pang of guilt. She didn't deserve this. None of them did. But the map had brought them here, and there was no turning back now. Cole drove with a grim expression, his hands tight on the steering wheel. Reaper could feel the tension between them, the weight of what they were about to do. It was all about to come to a head. The map had already taken them too far. "We get there, we lay low, and we plan," Reaper said, more to himself than to anyone else. "We'll figure this out, one step at a time." Cole didn't answer. He didn't need to. Reaper knew exactly what was going through his mind. They were both thinking the same thing. How long until they were discovered? How long until the people chasing them found this place, too? As they neared the cabin, Reaper's nerves were on edge. The dirt road opened up into a clearing, and he could see the small structure up ahead, half hidden by the trees. The place was exactly how he remembered it. Isolated, quiet, and secure. For now, it was the safest place they could be. Cole pulled up in front of the cabin, cutting the engine as the truck came to a stop. Reaper didn't wait for an invitation. He jumped out, scanning the area for any signs of danger. The woods around them were silent, but that only made the tension in the air feel heavier. He motioned for Cole and Lily to follow him as he approached the door of the cabin. He pushed it open, the hinges creaking with the effort, and stepped inside. The cabin smelled musty, like old wood and forgotten memories. It was a simple place, just a few rooms with basic furniture. Nothing fancy, nothing to attract attention. But it was secure. It was home for now. Reaper moved to the back room and began checking the locks on the windows. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, even if he couldn't see anyone. The last thing they needed was a surprise attack. Cole and Lily entered behind him, and Reaper motioned for them to sit. "We're safe here for the time being," he said, trying to sound confident, but it felt hollow. He knew this wasn't over. "But we can't stay long. The moment they find us here, we're screwed." Cole looked over at him, his expression grim. "You really think they'll find us?" "I don't think. I know." Reaper paused, trying to get his thoughts in order. "But we have one shot at this. We need to get the map to someone who can help us. Someone who can make this all go away." Lily, who had been silent for the last few minutes, spoke up. "Who can we trust with this?" Her voice was small, but there was a sense of understanding behind her words. Reaper met her gaze, his heart heavy. "I don't know, kid, but we're going to have to figure that out soon." He reached into his jacket and pulled out the map, carefully unrolling it on the table. The markings were faded, but Reaper could still make out the lines and symbols that marked the hidden locations. Each one was a piece of the puzzle, a piece that would lead them to something they could never undo. But what was worse was knowing that there were people, powerful people, who wanted that map, who would do anything to get it. And if they couldn't get their hands on it, they'd settle for making sure Reaper and Lily were silenced forever. As he stared at the map, Reaper felt a deep sense of foreboding. He didn't know what the next move was. He didn't know who to trust, or how they could even begin to undo the mess they had walked into. But one thing was certain, they had to act fast. "We need to get the documents to someone who knows how to expose this," Reaper said, his voice firm. "Someone who can make sure the people behind this can't hurt anyone else." Cole nodded, but there was a question in his eyes. "And who's that exactly?" Reaper's gaze flickered to Lily, who was staring at the map with an intensity that mirrored his own. "I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. We have no choice." The silence in the cabin was thick with uncertainty. Reaper knew they were running out of time. The trucks they had outrun were just the beginning. Soon, they would be surrounded by enemies who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. And Reaper knew they couldn't hide forever. The time for running was over. The time for fighting back had come. But first, they had to make it out of here alive.